Before we go on to build bigger and better things with Hyperapp, I wanted to take a moment to talk about how we create views. H and text are fairly low level and specific functions, not exactly the most convenient or necessarily the most readable, and that's a good thing because that means we can create our views staying close to the metal and get the most performance out of our apps if we want, or we could choose to implement a more convenient layer on top of them that gives us the developer experience that we would prefer. Or rather than developing something on our own, we could use one of the options that is already available. Maybe you're familiar with JSX if you've used React before. That's perfectly possible to use with Hyperapp as well, and I'm going to show you how right now. I'm going to start by just taking out the view so that we can keep it in a comment here for reference. And if you haven't used JSX before, this is what it looks like. It looks like regular HTML, which is familiar for many people. So we have a pair of main tags, and inside we have an h1, class greeting, hello. And now that we want to bring in a variable, we need to use curly brackets to interpolate the variable inside the JSX. State name h1, and we have an h2 with clicks, state clicks, and a button on click handler for that, and click me. Paragraph, please enter your name, input type text, value is state name, and on input is the input handler. And one important thing with JSX is if you have a self-closing tag, a tag that doesn't need content, you need to be explicit with closing it with a slash at the end, like in XML. So this is what JSX looks like. Of course, it doesn't just work straight out of the box. This isn't valid JavaScript. It needs to be transformed into something that is valid JavaScript by a tool, a transpiler. So usually you wouldn't do this in a page directly that's running in the browser. You do it locally in your development workflow to translate it into something that could run in a browser. Flames.io has a built-in support for doing it, so I can show you how it works. We'll use the Babel transpiler. And now Babel thinks that we are trying to make React nodes. That's why it's wondering why isn't React available. We need to tell Babel not to try to translate our JSX into calls to React create element. Instead, we need to import a specific pragma for Hyperapp and tell Babel to use that. So let's import it and let's call it H from https unpkg.com Hyperapp JSX pragma. And since this tool has a dependency on Hyperapp, the way unpkg works in order to resolve dependencies in important modules is you need to add this question mark module. So now we have the pragma available. Now we can get rid of H and text because we're not actually using them explicitly in our code. Now we need to tell Babel to use this pragma, which we can do with a magic spell here where we say at JSX is the name of the function. And there you go. It works. This is JSX. So for a lot of people, it feels comfortable and familiar to be able to write your views the same way as the HTML that they're supposed to produce. One downside with using this system of Babel and JSX is, of course, that it doesn't run directly in the browser. If you'd like something that's very similar, but that actually does run directly in the browser with no transpilation needed, there's another tool called Hyperlit. We can get rid of the pragma. It's conventionally imported as HTML, and we're going to change it to Hyperlit. And Hyperlit works by, instead of just having the HTML-like code straight up in the editor, we wrap this in backticks that are prefixed with the function that we imported. This is called tag template literals, and you can read more about it on Mozilla Developer Network, for example. It's still not working because in tag template literals, variable interpolation doesn't work with curly brackets like this. It works with $ curly brackets. So we need to put $ in front of all the curly brackets. And we're back. And this doesn't require any transpilation. This runs straight up in any modern browser. And to prove it, I'm going to turn off Babel again. There we go. Now, even though this doesn't require any extra complexity in your developer workflow, there's still parsing that needs to happen, and that can suck out a little bit of performance. It's not bad, but still, you might prefer to have something that's even more close to the metal, just a little bit more convenient than straight up H and text. So I'm going to demonstrate for you also a system that is called @Hyperapp HTML. And what this basically is the H function, but instead of you needing to specify the tag name as a string, all the available HTML tags have been wrapped up for you in functions. So you just import the functions that you need. Here we need main, we need H1, we need H2, button, paragraph, and input. And also we need text. Here we can just say we have a main function, and conveniently props are optional when using these Hyperapp HTML functions. H1 class greeting text hello state name. H2 text clicks is state clicks. Button on click handler text click me. And a paragraph with some content, some text. Please enter your name and input with type text value state name, and on input handler. And this works as well. This is perhaps not obviously a lot more compact, but it gets rid of a lot of extra little characters that makes it easier to read, yet it's still functional, and the performance impact is absolutely negligible. So this is the system I'm going to be using going forward in the videos. But it's still important to realize that this is a trade-off that is completely up to you. Maybe you prefer to use H in text so you don't have to import any other dependencies. Or maybe you prefer to use JSX or Hyperlit. None of these systems are doing anything extra or magical behind the curtains. They all basically boil down to using H in text. So it really is up to you.